Xavier takes the children away while he reflects on the unconventional path of his life. He notes that while most people go from point A to B, his journey has been quite different. To add a touch of whimsy, Xavier and his kids dress up nicely for an event, posing for photos on what seems to be wedding photos. Xavier gets married to a Chinese woman. This film serves as the conclusion to the Spanish apartment trilogy. Xavier strolls into the lively Chinese town, where he witnesses old ladies dancing folk dances, capturing the essence of cultural celebration. Later, he enters an establishment, engrossed in writing a novel set in New York, his current abode. The novel, titled Chinese Puzzle, delves into the intricacies of a complicated life story. When Xavier's editor calls for an update, he confesses that his life in New York has become rather ordinary. The narrative provides a glimpse into Xavier's past with his ex-wife, Wendy. Their relationship has soured, with Wendy expressing anger over Xavier's decision to quit his job due to dissatisfaction. Wendy thinks what is more important are the earnings, not job satisfaction. The couple has been arguing frequently, and Xavier admits to his mother that the once happy 10 years have turned into something terrible. Xavier's parents, too, are divorced. Despite seeking advice from his mother, Xavier remains stubborn, convinced that everything will be fine. In a conversation with his editor, Xavier opens up about the mistakes that led to the breakdown of his marriage with Wendy. The storyline weaves together elements of reflection, cultural exploration, and the challenges of navigating love and relationships. Xavier recounts a story about Isabel, his lesbian friend who has been longing to have children. Isabel meets a Chinese-American woman, and they fall in love, deciding to build a life together. However, their attempts to conceive a baby in New York City prove challenging. In an unexpected turn, Xavier approaches his then-wife Wendy with a request to help Isabel have a baby. Wendy's reaction catches him off guard, and the process is complicated by the need for a natural conception rather than a clinical approach. They opt for a more unconventional method, using a turkey baster for insemination. Isabel assures them that she will stay away, to maintain peace of mind. To proceed, Xavier visits a fertility clinic to harvest sperm. The process is far from sexy, prompting Xavier's imagination to wander into outlandish scenarios. However, thoughts of Wendy deter him, and he shifts his focus to a more erotic imagination involving Isabel and other women. Despite the unconventional method, Xavier successfully completes the harvesting process. Isabel expresses gratitude for Xavier's sacrifice, assuring him that he'll like her girlfriend. Xavier shares this development with his editor, introducing an unexpected twist in the narrative. Wendy goes on a business trip, and Xavier senses that she wants to confess something to him. Intrigued, Xavier directly asks Wendy about it. Wendy reveals that she has met someone in New York and is actively seeking a new apartment, leaving the kids with Xavier. She initially opts for a new apartment, but later switches to moving into the family house. Xavier acknowledges that the kids are aware of their unhappiness and have been emotionally affected. To make matters worse, Wendy plans to leave Paris and take the children with her to New York. Xavier, feeling that he has ruined his own life as he approaches 40, is losing hope. In his children's room, he engages in a conversation with a mysterious man. Eventually, Xavier decides to let his children go with Wendy and accompanies them on their flight to America. However, Xavier's son, Tom, expresses reluctance to move to New York and would prefer to stay in Paris. Xavier persuades his son to go to New York by highlighting its positive aspects, but faces the difficult question of whether he wants them to leave. Xavier honestly admits that he doesn't want them to go, promising to join them soon, and convinces his son to go with his mom. After seeing his kids off, Xavier rushes to a book launch, where Jean-Claude is speaking about his work. A persistent man keeps bothering Xavier, urging him to contact him in the future. While Xavier is a big hit in Paris, he finds it challenging to concentrate on the event as he is consumed by thoughts of his son. Despite his success in Paris, Xavier decides to embark on a new journey to America to be close to his children, marking a significant turning point in his life. In his new life in New York, Xavier is embracing his rock star existence as a writer, sharing a living space with Isabel and her girlfriend Ju. Isabel is expecting a child, and Xavier is the father. Despite Xavier's concerns about their unconventional lifestyle, Isabel and Ju reassure him that it doesn't matter. Xavier contemplates finding his own apartment, but Ju mentions the exorbitant costs of properties, especially if he wants to live near the kids. However, Isabel and Ju exchange glances upon learning where Wendy, Xavier's ex-wife, is currently residing, a much nicer neighborhood in Manhattan. Xavier decides to visit Wendy, where he meets John, Wendy's new husband, who happens to be much taller than him. Although Xavier feels intimidated and unwelcome, John allows him in. Unfortunately, Wendy is not present, so John engages in conversation with Xavier, expressing that the kids are cool and great, Despite John's chattiness, Xavier is not in a talking mood and conveys the pain of being a foreigner in the States, feeling like an outsider. There's a cultural disconnect between John and Xavier. Later, Wendy arrives, seeming uncomfortable with Xavier's presence. John, however, tends to over-explain things. When the children arrive, they are ecstatic to see their dad. However, Xavier and Wendy argue about the kids wearing uniforms, as Xavier is against the idea. Wendy eventually agrees to a compromise, allowing Xavier to have the kids a few times a week. John convinces Wendy, who is initially erratic, that Xavier might be experiencing culture shock, a sentiment echoed by Isabel. Continuing the legal battle with Wendy, Xavier decides to consult a divorce lawyer himself. Confused about the legal process, he seeks guidance. The lawyer assures him that they can navigate the rules, emphasizing that it's New York, so things work differently there. In the midst of these challenges, Xavier reaches out to his ex-girlfriend, French Martine, who now has a grown-up son named Lucas. Xavier begins the process of finding an apartment in New York, a somewhat dizzying experience given the myriad options. He explores various properties, searching for a suitable place for himself and his 2 kids. However, the high rents for good and quiet places prove to be troubling. Returning to Isabel and Ju's grand apartment, Xavier feels a tinge of envy. Ju comes up with an idea to alleviate Xavier's housing burden. She takes him to Chinatown and finds him a new room just above a Chinese store, which turns out to be Ju's old apartment. Xavier finds it suitable and begins making it livable, although it only consists of a cushion and Chinese takeouts. Now living in solitude, Xavier reflects on his situation. Immersed in his writing process, Xavier is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Hegel, a philosopher. However, Hegel is merely a figment of Xavier's imagination, serving as inspiration for his creative endeavors. After imparting a quote, Hegel disappears, leaving Xavier finally inspired to continue his writing. Staying in Chinatown, Xavier observes the Chinese aunties engaging in their dances, finding cultural inspiration. Eager to involve his kids in his new life, he invites them to help renovate his apartment by painting. The family-friendly activity is followed by a shared moment watching The Simpsons, fostering a sense of togetherness in their transformed surroundings. Later on, Xavier consults his lawyer, and the grim reality surfaces. He is on a tourist visa, making it illegal for him to find a job in the country. Despite his prominence in Paris, in America he is considered undocumented and jobless. The lawyer suggests seeking illegal employment on a tourist visa, and assures him they can navigate the complexities. As Saturday arrives, Xavier gears up for his day with the kids. During this time, he connects with a fellow divorcee father, sharing the challenges they face with their ex-wives. The exchange leads to the formation of a new friendship as they exchange numbers. Xavier finds a new companion in Ray. After dropping off the children, Xavier meets with Ray, actively looking for job opportunities. Despite initial rejections due to his foreign status, Xavier lands a job as a bike courier delivery, observing profound details about New York's obsession with the sky and the uneven streets. Eventually, Xavier heads to Wendy's, but there's a twist: he's late, because something significant happened before, and Wendy is eager to know. While riding a taxi, the driver takes a wrong turn, leading to a confrontation with the truck driver that escalates into a physical. The taxi driver, infuriated, attacks the truck driver with a bat, and in retaliation, the truck driver beats the taxi driver. Xavier steps in to stop the fight, but the taxi driver is already bloodied and needs to be taken to the hospital. Xavier takes the wheel, driving the cab to rush the injured driver to the hospital. However, when recounting the incident to Wendy, Xavier doesn't disclose the full story. Instead, he shares the details with his editor as they collaborate on building the book. Amidst this, a call from Martine interrupts, asking for a favor. Martine is coming to New York and requests to be picked up. In the midst of these chaotic events, Xavier's lawyer advises him to consider marriage as a means to secure legal status in the United States, citing his good looks as an advantage. The lawyer emphasizes that this could be an easier path for him. Xavier visits the Chinese taxi driver, whose family expresses immense gratitude for saving him. The taxi driver, sincerely thankful, asks if there's anything he can do in return, offering assistance. In a jest, Xavier jokingly suggests finding him a woman to marry the next day. The message reaches the family, and to everyone's surprise, they take it seriously, presenting a woman beside him as a potential match. Later, Xavier picks up Martine from the airport. Martine initially discusses business matters, particularly procuring organic Chinese tea. However, her demeanor shifts when she tearfully reveals her son's high fever, and the guilt she feels for leaving him behind. Martine seeks Xavier's support and asks him to stay for a while. Martine attends a business meeting, accompanied by Xavier. Despite Martine's unexpected ability to speak Mandarin, the meeting takes a humorous turn as she seemingly speaks gibberish, eliciting laughter from the executives. Facing a disagreement, Martine negotiates in her unique way, successfully navigating the situation. Unable to find an immediate flight for Martine, Xavier allows her to stay at his place. Although they share a bed, it remains platonic. However, Martine attempts to seduce Xavier, prompting a moment of hesitation given their past romantic involvement. Eventually, they succumb to the temptation and share an intimate reunion. Rushing to catch a bus to the airport, Xavier and Martine both acknowledge that they shouldn't have slept together, complicating their relationship further. Later, Wendy and Xavier, accompanied by their respective lawyers, gather for a mediation session. Wendy's lawyer expresses delight at the prospect of settling things amicably, while Xavier's lawyer appears less serious and offers unnecessary input during the conversation. The mediation concludes, leaving Wendy and Xavier alone to walk and talk. Wendy extends an apology to Xavier, acknowledging the need to transfer Mia and Tom to a new school midway. As they exit the building, they engage in a conversation to catch up on each other's lives. During the conversation, Wendy reveals that she and John are planning to get married. She emphasizes that her decision to marry John is rooted in love, rather than financial considerations. Xavier reassures her not to worry, and Wendy extends an invitation for him to attend her wedding. Xavier finds himself on the verge of marriage, entering into a fabricated relationship with the daughter of the taxi driver. The entire family collaborates in constructing the facade of their relationship, meticulously staging numerous photos to make their fake connection appear genuine. Nancy becomes the chosen name for Xavier's pretend wife. As newlyweds, they head to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement for scrutiny, an investigation into the authenticity of their relationship. The investigators scrutinize their IDs and inquire about the circumstances of their meeting. Nancy attempts to portray their meeting as a joyful encounter, and they truthfully reveal that they met in a hospital. However, the investigation takes a turn to cast Xavier as a potential liar or con man. Nancy, triggered by the line of questioning, berates the investigator, defending their truthfulness. Despite her objections, the investigator asserts that questioning is part of the legal process. Eventually, Nancy reluctantly agrees to leave Xavier alone with the investigator, who proceeds to delve into intimate details of Xavier's relationship with Nancy in an uncomfortable and cold manner. Navigating through an uncomfortable situation, Nancy and Xavier go out, trying to make the best of their fabricated relationship. Xavier, juggling responsibilities, heads to the laundry shop while continuing his writing. His life with the kids unfolds in the backdrop. A call interrupts his routine, this time from Xavier's father, expressing a desire to see him. Xavier reflects on the differences between him and his father, pondering their strained relationship. As they explore New York together, they struggle to find common ground. Xavier's father stumbles upon the initials that Xavier wrote with his mother, sparking introspection. Another call disrupts their day, this time from Isabel, who is in labor. Xavier confides in his father about the situation, prompting a stern warning to distance himself from Isabel. Xavier seizes the moment to question his father about love, wondering why his parents parted ways. As they stroll, Xavier finally spots the initials of his parents on the pavement, bringing him a sense of happiness and reassurance about the love that led to his birth. Isabel gives birth, and Xavier is there to hold the newborn. Returning to the immigration office, they disclose Xavier's insemination of Isabel for a lesbian couple, their friends. Nancy passionately defends the decision against the investigators' scrutiny. Back in Brooklyn, at Isabel's place, a new babysitter is welcomed. Xavier and Isabel go out together, with Isabel encouraging Xavier to pursue a new romance, but he remains hesitant. Later, Xavier brings Isabel home drunk, and an awkward encounter with the babysitter ensues, revealing Isabel's relationship status. While dealing with family dynamics and babysitting arrangements, Xavier is pressured by his editor to finish the novel. Isabel, noticing something, confides in Xavier. She reveals the truth about the babysitter, admitting that they have continued seeing each other romantically. Ju, Isabel's partner, asks her to drop off the babysitter, leading to a surprising revelation during the ride. The babysitter catches Isabel looking at her luscious thighs, creating an unexpected tension. Despite their complicated dynamics, Isabel impulsively kisses the babysitter, leaving her stunned. As the babysitter continues to care for Isabel's baby, their relationship becomes more complex. Isabel admits that the babysitter is in love with her, causing strain in her relationship with Ju. Xavier advises Isabel to consider the consequences, emphasizing the potential damage. Isabel initially claims to have ended things with the babysitter, but in reality, they continue their affair. Isabel finally confesses that she can't resist keeping the babysitter as a side piece. Despite Xavier's disagreement, Isabel berates him, expressing her frustration and leaving, unwilling to hear any more advice. Later, Martine is back in New York with her kids, and they quickly form a close bond with Xavier. In his small apartment, Xavier welcomes both sets of kids, creating a makeshift family sleeping together in the confined space. As the children sleep, Martine and Xavier share another intimate moment, sparking a conversation about the possibility of rekindling their relationship. Martine, eager and persuasive, expresses her desire to be a couple again, emphasizing the positive connection between their respective children. She sees it as a chance for a fresh start. Xavier, however, remains reserved and hesitant, uncertain about diving back into a romantic relationship with Martine. Their history as college sweethearts in the Spanish apartment adds complexity to their current situation, and Xavier is cautious about taking the leap. Despite Xavier's reservations, he and Martine decide to spend time together with their children. A lighthearted visit to a frog store adds a touch of humor as Martine playfully suggests the kids kiss a frog. Returning to the apartment, Xavier continues his writing. Anxious yet hopeful, he shares the manuscript with Martine, eagerly awaiting her reaction. As Martine reads, a carousel of emotions plays across her face, providing a moment of tension and anticipation. Martine praises Xavier's work, acknowledging that it surpasses his previous writing. However, she can't help but comment on the complexity of his life, and Xavier candidly mentions the intricacies, including his marriage with Wendy and involvement in impregnating 2 lesbians. Later, at the park, Xavier and Martine enjoy watching the old ladies dancing. The scene shifts to Isabelle urgently calling Xavier for babysitting, as she plans to meet the babysitter for a tryst. Tom overhears Isabelle revealing to Xavier that the baby is his daughter. Isabelle leaves, and Xavier, now responsible for Tom and Mia, explains the situation to them. Mia nonchalantly concludes that the baby has 2 mommies and a daddy. Meanwhile, Ju calls Xavier, reporting that immigration has contacted her to verify their connection with Nancy. They are supposed to meet at the apartment, currently being used by Isabelle and the babysitter for their affair. Xavier rushes to the apartment as Ju arrives. Unable to reach Isabelle, Xavier climbs the fire exit, finding Isabelle and the babysitter in a compromising position. Ju enters the apartment, discovering Xavier alone, while Isabelle and the babysitter make an escape to the rooftop. In a rush, Xavier urges Ju to open the door for Nancy while he hastily disposes of Isabelle's clothes. Without time to prepare their stage show, the investigators arrive for their routine inspection. The inspector scrutinizes the women's clothes on the tables, which actually belong to Isabelle. The situation forces them to put on a convincing act, pretending to be a couple living in the apartment. To complicate matters, Martine and the children unexpectedly arrive. Xavier improvises, referring to Martine as Maria, the kids' babysitter from Puerto Rico. Although not fully explained, Martine plays along. The inspector, however, remains skeptical, giving them hard looks. Another twist unfolds when Ju and Isabelle's daughter are with Tom and Mia. Tom, quick on his feet, fabricates a story about knowing about the baby and wanting to spend time with his sister. Surprisingly, this diversion helps Xavier navigate the tricky situation. The inspector ends up making positive remarks, convinced by their staged marriage and the illusion of cohabitation. Unexpectedly, Isabelle knocks on the door, dressed in mismatched patterns. To dispel doubts about her affairs, Isabelle kisses Ju. Martine arrives to help make dinner, unfazed by the earlier treatment. Later, Wendy shows up to pick up the kids, and Martine warmly opens the door. Xavier can't believe that his exes are getting along, especially considering their previous animosity. Deciding to go out together, the 4 of them take a trip on the subway. The women share some less than flattering thoughts about Xavier, with Wendy suggesting he needs a combination of the 3 of them. Days later, in Brooklyn, Martine leaves with the kids. As their bond grows stronger, Xavier watches them depart. Tom asks if Xavier wants Martine to stay, but Xavier admits that it's complicated. Tom mentions that New York is great, a contrast to his previous statement about not wanting to live there. Both Tom and Mia reveal that they are sad to leave, prompting Xavier to run after Martine and her kids in an attempt to convince them to stay. Martine is already on the bus when Xavier approaches them. He urges Martine to stay, despite the disruptions it might cause to their lives. The kids express their desire to stay, and Xavier reassures Martine, even suggesting he'll find her an American to marry. After some contemplation, Martine agrees. Later, Xavier discusses the book ending with his editor, who finds it unusual. However, both Martine and Xavier agree that it's an ending, whether happy or not, and so concludes the complicated life story of Xavier. In a mid-credits scene, Xavier and Martine walk through a parade while being filmed by Tom. Ju and Isabelle's relationship resumes, and Nancy also finds her own love.